This is from B.F. Snook. B.F. Snook and W.H. Brinkerhoff. E.J. mentions this in his book, by the way, folks. I'll put the link to that in the description down below. Volume 3 of his book completely blows the lid off of this claim, by the way, with all of the primary sources. Mm-hmm. So I want to share one of the quotes here from a book they wrote called The Visions of E.G. White, Not of God. This was in 1866. Ellen White wrote this when, E.J.?
1864, when she first made the statement. They defected and left, and in 1866 responded. That's just 2 years later.
2 years later, this is what they write in their book on page 4. Again, you can look at this book online. The PDF is available online. Just Google The Visions of E.G. White, Not of God, B.F. Snook. Mm-hmm. They say on page 4, quote, "These visions teach that the Negro race is not human. This charge they deny, but we will let the reader decide for himself. Here is what she says. Since the flood, there's been an amalgamation of man and beast, as may be seen in the almost endless varieties of species and in certain races of men." Spiritual Gifts, Volume 3, page 75, the quote we looked at. "But what are we to understand by certain races of men?" Remember, this was an Adventist, a primary source at the time of this being written. "She has not informed us in her writings, but left us to fix the stigma of amalgamation where we may see fit. But the interpretation has come to light. She told it to her husband, and he made it known to Elder Ingraham. And he divulged the secret to the writer, that Sister White had seen that God never made the darky." That's a primary source, folks. But we're supposed to go with F.D. Nickel, 90 years removed, over a guy like this, who you just have to say, well, he was lying. Okay, well, whatever. That's a primary source. I'm rolling with the primary source over 90 years removed. He says that Ellen White confided in James, her husband, and James spilled the beans because he couldn't keep the secret, that she said what it meant was God never made the darky. Another quote, just to show you how the word amalgamation was used at the time of Ellen White writing this. Abraham Lincoln, rather popular guy, known by quite a few people in the United States, you'd say. What does he say? This is from the Collected Works of Abraham Lincoln, Volume 2, page 406. He said this in 1857. So around Ellen White's time, who had books in her library that used the word amalgamation very regularly, and it referred to what exactly we're talking about tonight, Abraham Lincoln uses this word as well in the same grammatical construction as Ellen White did. This is him speaking about the political climate of the day. Quote, "There is a natural disgust in the minds of nearly all white people to the idea of the indiscriminate amalgamation of the white and black races. And Judge Douglas evidently is basing his chief hope upon the chances of being able to appropriate the benefit of this disgust to himself, if he can, by much drumming and repeating, fasten the odium of that idea upon his adversaries. He thinks he can struggle through the storm. He therefore clings to this hope as a drowning man to the last plank. He makes an occasion for lugging in." Well, the point is instead of having to read all this, the point is he uses the phrase amalgamation the same exact way that Ellen White did, because that was the way it was culturally used at that time. So when these SDA apologists tell us that we're clueless critics and we're not using words the proper way, like the word race, they try to say, no, by race in that day, it meant class of people. It didn't mean ethnic races. Well, okay, the word amalgamation at that time clearly meant miscegenation.
Right.
And that beast was a regular term to refer to colored people. So the amalgamation that was happening, that she was talking about, was between white people and colored people.
This is going to get a whole lot worse in just a minute. Okay. So